Hey everybody, I'm just going to do some shading with you today, show you some techniques. I've got two pens here that I'll be doing it with. This one is a fineliner and this one is my favorite. This is a ballpoint. So a fineliner has got an ink end and a ballpoint, there's a little ball in the end there which moves ink around. So we'll start off with just some basics with shading. We've got hatching, and you can follow along at home and find a pen and do this along with me. So basic hatching, which is when you go in one direction, you can have it close together and that's, or layer over, and that's what makes it dark, or you can spread it out and that's what makes it lighter. So with the ballpoint you can see back and forward in one direction and then spreading out. You can do hatching in curves like that. You can do it up and down, sideways, doesn't matter as long as it's just in the one direction. So the second one is cross hatching, and this is when you start off with some normal hatching and then you cross over it, and that makes cross hatching. So if I'm doing it in a curved hatch, I can cross over it. It doesn't matter what direction, as long as there's two directions there, then it becomes cross hatching. The other one is multi hatching, where I've got my hatching, my cross hatching, and then I'm going over it a third time, which makes it multi-hatching. Or you could do 4 or 5 or 6 times. It's just multiple times means multi-hatching. Same with my ballpoint pen. That's 2 directions, so that's cross-hatching, and then a third direction coming through. So as you can see, the multi-hatching is really awesome if you want to do dark shading, because you're going over it many times. The final one I want to show you is what I call scribble. And this doesn't have rules, so I can go in any direction I want, and it will get darker in the areas where I layer on top, and it will stay lighter where I leave it empty. Same over here with the ballpoint. Wherever I layer more, it will be darker, and as I go softer and more spread out, it will be lighter. So that's scribble. So we've got hatching, cross hatching, multi hatching, and scribble. There are more ways to shade with the pen, but these are the ones that I use, and these are the ones that we'll work on today. One more point on shading is that it's not about how hard you press. It's not good to press really hard in order to get it dark, because what happens when you press really hard is you actually dent your paper, and that gives a really ugly effect. So rather do it softly and then just layer it, and as you layer it 2, 3, 4 times, it's going to get nice and dark. Okay, alright, let's try this on some shapes. So the first shape we'll do is let's do a cube. So this is a box, or like a dice even. So first of all, I'm doing my outline, and then let's imagine that the sun or the light is coming from this direction towards the box. So that means that it's going to be light on top, it's going to be dark on the side, there'll be a shadow over here, and it'll be a little bit dark on that side. So we'll give this a go and see how we go. So it's a box, it's got straight sides that go up and down, so I'm going to go up and down as well with my shading. So I'm following the shape of the thing that I'm shading. It's got straight up and down sides, so I go straight up and down. I can also do cross hatching on here, where I can see the top and bottom lines of the box go in that direction. I'm going to follow that direction and do my cross hatching across the box like that. And then on the front of the box I might just do some hatching straight up and down This is with the fineliner. And then I might leave the top, or if I do something on the top, it would be super light and spread out. And then I know that there's going to be a shadow here. If you imagine that this is sitting on a table, tables are flat, so the shading should be flat across. So I'm going to go like this. Just do some flat lines out from my box, and then if I want to make them a little darker, I can do a little bit of cross hatching across that, or scribble it out a bit. So let's see what this looks like with a ballpoint pen. Remember, a fineliner is really easy to get nice dark shapes, but it's harder to get these sort of softer areas. Ballpoint pen is a little easier in that sense. So we've got our box shape. Got all my side lines going in the same direction there. The light's going to be coming in the same direction, so we'll start on this side, up and down, because that's the height of the box, and then on a diagonal, because that is the direction of the side lines. You can see that I can control the feel of the ink a lot more with a ballpoint. I'm just going to go up and down along here. I'm pressing really softly, but it's got good coverage. To see what I'm doing with my hand when I'm shading, I'm actually anchoring my hand on the page. My hand is on the page, and all I'm doing is moving my fingers like this. So it's a lot easier to control what's going on. My whole hand is anchored. I'm not hovering in the air, and I'm just going up and down with my fingers. So let's go slightly sideways there, and then we'll go out. Remember, we've got a table. We're imagining it's on a table, so I'm going to go out with the table for my shading, and then maybe scribble that out a little bit. It's going to be darker closer to the box where the shadow is. And there's our two examples for a box. So let's try something a little bit more difficult. Let's do a circle or a ball. Shading is really important. How you do your shading, the directions of your lines is really important. I'll draw a second ball here, and I'll show you the difference. So I want this ball to be like a basketball or something that is really spherical. So if the sun is coming from that same angle, I need the shading, the shadow of the ball to be on this side. I'm going to use round lines to do that because the ball is round. So I'm going to curve my hatching so it goes in the same direction as the outline of the ball. And as I get closer to here, I'm going to get lighter, more spaced out until it's empty. And then I'm just going to layer it in the background a little bit. I can cross hatch it a little bit if I want to. It's a bit tricky though. And then I can do my table shadow. Okay. So if I don't do this type of directional shading, what will happen instead? If I did flat line shading, and just use straight lines to do it, it's really hard for me to show that it's a round ball, and that's because straight lines tell me that something's flat. So I'm almost saying that this is like a CD or something or a plate. I need to curve my lines if the outline of that thing is curved to really continue to tell the true story that this is a round spherical three-dimensional object. Okay, so let's do that with the ballpoint as well. So we've got our round ball, get our shape in, and then start working our shading. I feel way more comfortable with the ballpoint pen. I can really soften how much pressure I use, and I feel like I'll be able to get the 3D effect a lot easier. It's more forgiving. I can go around and then spread that out more, And all I'm doing is layering it to get that darker shadow on the base and up that side. Okay, and then my shadow under the ball. Okay, so I prefer ballpoint, but this is still effective. Let's do one more shape. Let's do a cone. So the sides of the cone are straight, but they're on an angle. Then the bottom of the cone is a little bit curvy because the cone is round at the bottom. So if I've got my sunlight coming from this direction still, then that means that the dark side of the cone is going to be over here, and I'm going to see how this line is straight and this line is straight. I've got to make my shading continue in that angle, so I'm always coming from this point and I'm just moving the base of my shading around that line. So I'm starting at the point and I'm staying at the point. I'm staying at that point because I'm following the shape of the cone. And it's going to layer it a lot more on this side where the shadow is and leave this side a little emptier. I can cross hatch this, and the way that I cross hatch it is I follow the shape of the cone with this circle base. So I'm going to cross hatch in that sort of curvy motion, and I keep most of my cross hatching on the right hand side because that's where I want it to stay darker. Okay, then I've got my table shadow coming out flat because it's on a table and fading off. Cool, let's do that with the ballpoint pen. It's 2 straight lines and then a curved base like that. And I'm going to come down, starting from the point at the top and spreading that out as I get, spreading this bit out as I get around. I'm just going to layer it a few times, and I'm getting lighter and lighter and more further apart as I get to the left. On the right hand side I'm still pressing confidently but not hard on the paper. Okay, and I'm going to cross hatch this. So I'm going to start on that edge, curving because the bottom of the cone is curved, and coming around. Might do a little bit more hatching there. There's my cone and my table shadow. Okay, so what I would love for you to do is to just experiment yourself working out how to shade with pen. If you've got a fineliner, then try with the fineliner, and if you've got a ballpoint, try with them. It's great for you to practice with both. If you don't have, and you've only got a ballpoint, that's not a problem, try with the ballpoint. So just to remind you of what we did, we looked at 4 different types of shading. We looked at hatching, which is when you go in one direction. Cross hatching is when you have one direction crossed over with the second one. Multi-hatching is when you have one direction crossed over with the second one and then a third or more over that. And then scribble is when there's not really any rules on what direction you go, you just go where you want. And we used most of those in these shapes. We used straight hatching. Remember we were talking about the importance of directional shading. What you do with your pen is telling the story of what's on this paper. So if the box has got straight sides, then you need to do straight shading. If it's got round edges, then you do round shading. You don't do flat when it's supposed to be 3-dimensional round. We did the same with the ballpoint, and then with the cone at the bottom on the flat side, we went straight lines, but we curved it around, starting from the point and keeping at the point the whole way. And then we did a cross hatch across it in the direction of this bottom curve here. We kept our table shadows really flat because it's a flat surface that it's on, and we've come up with a really great result.